Good afternoon, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch on Sunday, February 5, 2023 on our planet. I hope you're all well. So this afternoon, I want to talk to you a little bit about the theory or the idea of an unlocking of the crust and the crustal displacement all in one day, as Mr. Ben Davidson of the Suspicious Observers suggests. And I want to point out some things that he is leaving out. Now, when we talk about the Earth's next disaster cycle, some important information is being left out, and we are only given a doomsday flood map, which by his admission was a sea level program that he used. So it is not something that says the crust will unlock and slip, and then the oceans will come up and slosh over continental United States, covering Canada. Now, I do not dispute that in the past there was ocean inundation across the lands. In fact, there is evidence, yes. What I am suggesting is it may be a complete axial tilt of our planet and not a crustal displacement in one direction only, as he indicates. And I will show you a major contradiction in a moment. Now, again, I don't subscribe to this belief. There are others such as Major White, Douglas Vogt, Charles Hapgood. They have their own hypothesis, and that's fine. But me, I also have to consider him in the book of Revelation, as well as some science. And I will explain. First, before I get into my talk, Ben Davidson's video, Safe Zones in the Disaster, Best Estimations. He contradicts himself between that video and his recent talks. So in one of his disaster playlist videos, he claims that when there's an unlocking of the crust, if this is Canada, and if this is Alaska, he claims the crust will shift this way. And on his videos, it shows Canada, northern Canada, and Alaska being at the equator, as well as Greenland being at the equator. Yet in recent videos in his Q&As, people are asking, well, what about Canada? What about Nunavut, Canada? And he says, well, if you can survive the cold, why would it be cold if Canada shifts to the equatorial regions of the planet? What are we missing here? So in my personal opinion, there's no way to know for sure that the crust is absolutely going to shift this way. There's no way to know that it is the crust that shifts rather than the entire planet on its axis. Perhaps by the influence of a large planetary body or planetary system, such as is described in the book of Revelation. However, Mr. Ben Davidson stated, without providing any explanation, there is no 10th planet. He was adamant. This was an answer to a comment that someone made. And in just a very short sentence, he said, there is no planet X. There's no 10th planet. One of many contradictions when we're talking about scriptures. Anyway, we'll leave that for a separate video. I'm just explaining to you some things that are being left out, if in fact there's going to be a crustal displacement, and I'll explain right now. Now, if this is to happen in one day, obviously there's going to be a huge, massive global earthquake, such as the book of Revelation describes. A severe earthquake like it has ever since man was on the earth. So great was the earthquake. Which, of course, I believe is going to happen, but I don't believe it's going to happen from a crustal shift, because he is leaving out some very important aspects of what's going to happen to our planet if it happens that way, which are as follows. Our fault lines would separate. There would be massive releases of magma through the plate transition zones, subduction zones, massive tsunamis, volcanoes will be popping off everywhere, including the ocean floors. There is no talk about this. Second, as have I explained in several videos in the past, our mantle plumes are anchored to the outer core, where our magnetic field is generated from. So folks, try and visualize this. Our mantle plumes, which are anchored to the outer core, extend to the underside of the lithosphere, in which our crust sits upon. If you're going to have a crustal displacement, it's going to be shifted off of these mantle plumes, some of which are hot spots, which formed over a geological time period. The Hawaiian Islands, for example, is a hot spot. The Hawaiian Islands were formed through a very long geological process lasting millions of years. The same with Iceland. So this is Iceland. This is Greenland. This is the Iceland mantle plume, which is actually an extension or arm of the larger Greenland plume. So if there's going to be a crustal separation, this is going to be separated, torn off its hotspot, just as Hawaii will be, just as many other areas of the world will be. So your mantle plume, anchored, secured to the outer core, the tail, the head, which can expand, sitting underneath the crust. The crust slips, the mantle plume is still there. So by that video, safe zones are the next disaster / best estimations. The Arctic would be dragged over the Hawaiian hotspot, and so forth. So he doesn't get into how the new crustal location shift will be over the mantle plumes and hotspots which remain in place, and the results of the global massive earthquakes, volcanoes popping off. There's only talk about the very, very few select places that, in his opinion, will be safe zones, as opposed to others. The United States Navy flood map during the pole shift, which is nowhere near as drastic. The coastal areas, yes, inundated. The Mississippi expanded, yes. connecting to the St. Lawrence all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Yes. Other areas, yes, but nowhere near as drastic as that doomsday flood map, which was recently presented. So again, there would be massive separation of the tectonic plates, earthquakes everywhere. His so-called safe zone would be crumbling all around you. So if you go ahead of time to what he says is a safe zone, well, that's going to shift. Do you think you're going to survive that in one day, the crustal displacement? The safe areas he's talking about. Is anybody going over the fault lines in those areas? And again, just trying to imagine the crust being ripped off the mantle plumes. And we get to the volcanoes being popping off all over the place. You're going to have a nuclear winter. April 1815, when Tambora went off, only one single volcano went off, estimated to be a VEI-7, resulted in the year without summer. The entire northern hemisphere covered. The sunlight couldn't get in. Massive crop failure. One volcano. One. Do you think that during a crustal displacement, you're only going to have one volcano going off, or thousands of volcanoes going off? Acts 2, verse 19. And I will display wonders in the sky above and signs on earth below, blood, fire, and vapors of smoke coming from the earth. That's my personal opinion on this one I bring to you. Think about the other responses from the planet. Now again, Mr. Ben Davidson was adamant there is no 10th planet, which is to deny wormwood, which is to deny the book of Revelation, because he wants to stay here and rebuild civilization after the end of the world. Just think about what's being presented to you. All right, don't get too freaked out about almost the entire globe being covered in water. Yes, lots of it will be. And again, that's the end of the timeline. There is this series of events to happen before then. And in my opinion, based on my belief in scriptures and the sighting of the 10th planet in 1983 through the satellite in space, I can't remember the name, as well as Voyager 10 space probe and Voyager 11 space probe. It is my belief that because of the gravitational influence from a large external body will cause an axial rotation. I don't believe it's going to happen in a day. Sorry. I believe we're going to start to experience some of those signs. The rogue tall waves come in, the large tidal waves slamming into the coast. An uptick in earthquakes, yes. Volcanic eruptions, yes. And an effort to conceal the sights in the heavens. That's why I'm laying out on the table for you. You can take it, follow up if you like, follow who you like. I don't subscribe to it. Sorry. Too many contradictions in Mr. Ben Davidson, especially religious contradictions. A lot of them. who would much rather apply science and science only rather than the hand of God and what he's done on our planet before and what he's going to be doing again. That's all, folks. Till my next talk.